curriculum, I would like to go to part 2 of my presentation.
Professor, there is a questions from the chat box from Rashmi. Say that I have concern regarding time management. So usually we are to present with the information and the existing syllabus that we have less time to integrate GCED in regular classes. So what can be some effective ways of integrating GCED in regular classes? Sir, is this question?
Are you reading it?
From the chat.
I didn't hear it very well, but there is this a question? It is written on the chat or?
Yeah, Professor, can you take a look in the chat box? There are questions from participants there. The chat box. So basically, Rashmi is asking, what can be some effective ways of integrating GSAT in regular classes?
Okay. Here, this one is from Raj. What can be some effective ways of integrating GCED in regular classes? Can I answer that in part 4? Because that is actually my topic for part 4. Okay, so can we move on now to part 2? If you have any questions, you can write it in the chat, and then Archita and Hyun can keep track of it. Okay? So now I would like to move on to part 2, which is again a review. And I am I'm suspecting after hearing from all of you that you are all very familiar with GCED, but I'd like to go back just a very brief review on what GCED is, because there are many interpretations, there are many versions, there are many perspectives on what GCED is. And let me just go back to what we would call a global citizen, because that is what we are aiming at when we say global citizenship education. We're actually trying to educate a global citizen. And who is a global citizen? One who identifies as a member of a common humanity, one who is active, not passive, one who participates fully uh, all dimensions of life, political, economic, social, culture, and so on. One who engages in civic actions to promote a better world and future based on human rights, nonviolence, democracy, and so on. And one who should simultaneously be an active and effective local and national citizen, or what we call a glocal citizen. So you have heard already of the term glocal, and that is what we actually refer to as global citizen. Then we have what uh, what does global citizenship seek to achieve? So it seeks to develop citizens who have the values, attitudes, knowledge, capability, uh, and responsible to participate in all dimensions of life, promote a critical consciousness and understanding by citizens, empower such active citizens to engage in personal and social
भाई
action.
साहब थोड़ा सा बिजी हूँ, फ्री हो गया आपको
You
बता
also have this in your global
भाई साहब
citizenship
थोड़ा सा बिजी हूँ,
education.
फ्री हो
So
गया आपको बता
this is just a review, a run through. And also, global citizenship is transformative. It cultivates lifelong skills and values. But it needs also to be integrated in all levels of education, from preschool to university level, and even since it's a lifelong education, it could be adult, and also in uh, the formal, non-formal, and informal modes of education. Citizenship education also builds on complementarities with other fields of transformative education, like disarmament education, education for international understanding, human rights education, education for global local justice, and education for sustainable development. GCED cannot stand alone. It uh, complements all these other transformative education. And it is holistic, multidimensional, and it includes so many themes and issues that have been dealt with in previous transformative education. However, we need to recognize that there are different paradigms of GCED. So I would like you to listen carefully to these two contrasting paradigms of GCED. So you can tell whether you are in the liberal or soft or neoliberal paradigm, or if your GCED is a critical paradigm. In the liberal paradigm of GCED, it emphasizes the importance of 21st century competencies and skills. It also says that nations are interdependent and there is a need to exchange resources. Like, for example, there are countries that are rich in mining, in minerals, while countries are rich in food stuff. And so it is important for exchanges of resources, exchanges of labor, division of labor. There are countries that provide manpower, and there are countries that provide skill labor. There are countries that provide management, mid management, and so on, technical labor and research. So it is important that nations are interdependent. Foreign aid and investment is also helpful. And in the liberal paradigm, it wants to maintain the political and global economic status quo to promote peace. It wants to maintain peace. So, in order to do that, we maintain the status quo. That is a very liberal paradigm. Now we go to the critical paradigm. Uh, in the critical paradigm, although 21st century skills can also are important, it can also be used for unethical and destructive goals. Therefore, if we look at the 21st century skills, they must be directed towards building a culture of peace. Unfortunately, some of the 21st century skills are being used for some destructive purposes. And that is what we should be careful in GCED, that we should channel these century skills in order to preserve or build a culture of peace and not to destroy. Then the interdependence between nations is good, but it must be based on equality and ethical collaboration. In other words, there will there should be no unequal inequality that will be derived, or there should be no power struggle among the countries or among the businesses. There should be a maintenance of social justice and human rights, even with the relationships among nations, so that the powerful nation should not discriminate or should not just trample upon the small or weak, non powerful, and not so powerful nations. In the global order, in the critical paradigm, they do not want to maintain the global order that is unjust. And therefore, if the global order is unjust, it should be transformed. The global order should overcome structural violence, inequities, discrimination, and so on. That is how the GCED, the critical GCED, would look at global citizenship education. So that is how you differentiate whether what you are teaching is a liberal paradigm, wanting to maintain the status quo, wanting to maintain the political structures among nations and within your own country, or wanting to change the structures if they are unequal and unjust. Okay. Now it is enlightening to know that the GCED has formed the SGD target of 4.7, which is the education for sustainability. But if you look at the SDG, the education for sustainability refers also to sustainability of life, sustainability for human rights, gender equity, promotion of culture, nonviolence, and so. So it's not just sustainability in development, but includes all of these aspects, and that is what makes GCED uh, really in line with the target 4.7 of the SGD. And so that ends part two, because it's a very brief review, and we will spend more time now in part three and part four. But I have this question for you to reflect on. Are there themes, issues, and values in a holistic GCED framework that you are already integrating in your GCED? What paradigm of GCED is emphasized in your national curriculum in India, in Kenya, in Nigeria, in the Philippines, in Indonesia? What do you think? Is it a soft liberal, neoliberal paradigm? Or is it transitioning to critical paradigm? Or is it a critical paradigm? What do you teach in your country? What kind of paradigm, what GCED paradigm are you teaching in your schools, in your curriculum? So that is my second question for this part, before we move on to the more interesting one, part three and part four. Anybody?
You guys reading. Yeah, you can ask question, Yoda.
Can you please speak louder, please? Because I can hardly hear you.
Yeah, Oyi Boga is raising hand.
Okay, Nigeria, from Nigeria.
Hello, hello. Good day, Prof.
Good evening.
Yeah, it's morning here in Nigeria.
Yes, okay, good morning.
Yes, my name is
Yes.
Uno Ibuga, and I quite enjoyed the course I took under your tutelage last year. So
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciated the way you handled the course.
Oh.
Actually, in Nigeria here, yes, ma'am. In Nigeria here, the curriculum that is operational has yet to embed the themes of GCED in a more integrated or holistic approach. But basically, there are some elements of GCED in the curriculum, but it is more like on the soft and liberal paradigm. Um, so that's what's operational in the country. My reasoning from the critical paradigm and the liberal paradigm, I would like to ask, is it really feasible to implement the critical paradigm at the micro level?
We lost you
Or,
there. We're losing you.
okay, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
my bandwidth is low. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear
Yes, we
me?
can hear. I can hear now.
Okay, so my question is, will it be feasible to operate the critical paradigm at the micro level? Will it be feasible? Because I tend to see it being more operational at the meso level. Thank you,
Mm.
Prof.
Yeah. Well, I think you could do it in the micro level, even with grade school, elementary school children. They can already distinguish what is right and wrong, and they can tell what is unjust, what is unfair. They can tell if one of their classmates is being discriminated against by some other classmates. And that is the time for your teacher or even older people or children to intervene or to give an example. if a student is being discriminated against and the teacher shows an example of calling the attention of those who discriminate, that is already part of GCED. That is uh, that is raising awareness on the rights of others, that is raising awareness on the meaning of injustice, and that is the rights of others. That's raising awareness on how feelings and emotions at a young age can distort the personality of young people when they grow old. So it is actually, for me, it is very good to start from young, and it's easy for you to teach them what is right and wrong. But what is even easier is for you to set the example of what is right and wrong, what is discriminatory and not discriminatory, what is just and unjust, and so on. So um, I on the last part, I will be giving you resources, references, or where you can get examples of how to integrate GCED in different subject areas. Okay.
Thanks,
Um,
Prof.
okay. Any other question?
Yeah, there is a question from Ocean in the chat
Mm-hmm.
box. He's asking that one of the challenges we see regularly in formal education system is that the educational structures, they do not make such space for integrating GSAT practices. How can we really bring in these learnings and practices into national curriculums, which are inherently rigid and not valuing indigenous knowledge or liberal systems?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can I answer this question in part four? I'll try. I will answer this question in part four, and also the question of Ocean in Sri Lanka. Uh, I'll answer part of it in part four. Uh, your question is, you have 21st century relevant skills and knowledge, such as technology, science, and engineering, but its connection to labor paradigm is less. The transformative aspect is rarely touched upon, unfortunately. So that is why maybe you will have a bigger challenge when you go in your country, so that you will be able to raise awareness on the transformative aspect. But I know you cannot do it alone. You will have to have colleagues. You will have to have a group of like-minded people, like-minded teachers, so that you will be able to make a dent in the curriculum. The curriculum you have in Sri Lanka or in any country is not set in stone. It can be reviewed, and I see here that among the countries that have integrated GCED in their curriculum, Sri Lanka is one. So it would be good for you to find out from your government, from your Department of Education or Ministry of Education, how far have they gone in integrating GCED in the curriculum. Okay, so let's move on. Um, let's move on to part three. I can see that many of you are interested in part three and part four. So let's move on to part three now. In part three, my our topic is GCED curriculum as product, process, praxis, or and context. So our first of all, uh, if you look at curriculum as a product, it is a set of documents that describes what the entering and exiting student should be. So it's like a factory, you know, or it's like yeah, you put in an item here, and then you expect the item to come out as a product. So in the process of manufacturing, you have this raw material going in through the process, and then when it comes out, it is the finished product. Now, the curriculum as a product is a set of documents that the student will have to go through so that when the student comes out, it is the product. So it is uh, the related areas to be experienced within the course or the program, and then the intended results or outcomes of having experienced the activities. So while the student is experiencing the activities, the teacher is assessing or evaluating what the student is going through, whether the student is going to the right track or not. And then at the end of the production period, the student comes out and the student is the product. You understand? That is the usual way of looking at curriculum. This is your curriculum, and you let the student pass through the curriculum. And then at the end of 6 years, at the end of 10 years, you have this product. The student is the product. That is the way of looking at curriculum as a product. However, there is also what we call curriculum as a process. It is the curriculum is not just the product, but also the process that goes in the while in the process of production. So um, we now have uh, the curriculum, which is not just a product, which is not just a written document, a syllabus, or a course outline. It is a process requiring the interaction between instructors, teachers, learners, and knowledge. And curriculum is what actually happens in the classroom. That is an ongoing social process comprised of the interactions of students, teachers, knowledge, and milieu. So um, you will probably ask, what is the difference between product and process? Now, in a curriculum as a process, uh, it is it goes through a cycle. In other words, you start in the curriculum, you start by diagnosing the needs. What are the needs of the students? And then, or what are the needs of your learners? If you are in a community, for example, you are an NGO, what are the needs of your members or of the community? Then after diagnosing the needs, you set specific objectives to fulfill those needs. And then you organize the content, um, you you organize the content, you select learning activities, you organize learning experiences, then you evaluate, and then you check if there is a balance for balance and sequence, and then you go back to re-diagnosing the needs, and then re-evaluating the objectives and so on. So this is a continuing cycle in the process, so that you're not just interested in coming out with a product, but you are also interested on what is going on, and you may have to change some of your activities, you may have to change some of your objectives, and you may have to change the evaluation process. So if we compare the product model and the process model, the this illustration shows the level of control and power of the teacher over the student in each model. While teachers and students are both involved in the curriculum development, the process model allows more opportunities for the students to participate in the development of the curriculum through diverse, creative, and participatory teaching and learning activities. But uh, curriculum is not just a product or a practice. It is also praxis. So there's a difference between the process and the praxis. The praxis is the conceptualization of curriculum derived from an orientation towards the human well-being, which makes it explicit the commitment to emancipation of the human spirit. That's why if you look at the praxis, you act on the basis of a theory on how to behave, theory on how students learn. So you act on that. Um, but it is not enough to act. You have to reflect. You reflect on what is the impact of your action. And that your reflection will results maybe in some revision of your theory, of your approach. And so there is a continuing cycle of the behavior, the action, reflection, and then a revisioning of your approach, of your own orientation. Now, it differs from the process model because in the process model, um, you still have a set of the objectives and the goals are still well set. You only change your procedure and you only change the level of control. But in the praxis model, it allows for a revision of the theory. And that is where GCED comes in. Because if in your reflection, you find out that the approach or even the theme itself is not relevant, does not work for the students, then you may have to go back and revise your theory, revise your uh, your entire approach, revise the basis on which you make your lesson, and that is going beyond the product, the process, and the praxis. However, there is a more important kind of curriculum, and that is what we call curriculum as context. And this is where global citizenship education would come in very strongly, so that a curriculum as context is a flexible curriculum for your school. The learners are able to recognize their learning as relevant. So when you're teaching something that is not relevant to them, you may not be there may not be so much interest in your lesson, in your session, in your class, because the learners do not find it relevant. The learning should be rooted in their local context, socially, culturally, economically. Unfortunately, many of the textbooks that are used by teachers, which are produced in the central office, the exercises, the activities, even the situations probably are not rooted in their local context. It may be strange to them culturally and socially, and therefore make your curriculum relevant. Your curriculum should make the learners feel a sense of belonging uh, before they launch into the unknown. So, how can you ask them to think globally if they're not even familiar with their local? So, you make them uh, be aware of the local context and relate it to the more global context. So, learners should explore and uncover the connected concepts and coherent to local, from local to global stories of progress, challenges, and opportunities. So now we have four kinds of curriculum: curriculum as a product, curriculum as a process, curriculum as praxis, and curriculum as context. they are not contradictory. What is important that is that you must not stay on product and process alone. You must bring in curriculum as praxis and curriculum as context. Um, Now, there are many levels of curriculum, and there are also many ways of uh, looking at curriculum and how it is delivered. For example, we are all very familiar with the formal or the written or the intended curriculum, which refers to what teachers and professors write to guide them in their teaching within a particular period. Now, in the elementary and high school, the guidelines for the curriculum are usually written by curriculum experts in the form of scope and sequence or learning competencies from the earliest grade to the highest grade. Then teachers are expected to write their curriculum based on predetermined scope and sequence. So many of you are very familiar with scope and sequence. Many of you are very familiar with learning competencies. That is what we call the formal curriculum. However, there is an informal curriculum. Uh, Here is when we have some teaching moments in school that may not have been intended in your official curriculum. Nevertheless, teachers should take the opportunity to use these unexpected occasions as the right moment to teach. So we call it right moment to teach. It's not in your curriculum, but there's something that happens in school or in class, and you take advantage of that. These are what we call parts of the informal or unintended or incidental teaching. And a good teacher should be able to spot those moments, those occasions right away and take advantage of those. Now, the learning curriculum is actually what the students learn. It is what is actually taught and delivered in the classroom, and it is measured in terms of indicators or assessment indicators. Now, what I would like you to uh, look into is what we call the hidden curriculum. The hidden curriculum can be found in the social structure of the classroom, the teacher's exercise of authority, the rules governing the relationship between teacher and student, teachers' use of language, textbooks, the tracking system, curriculum priorities, the non academic outcomes of schooling or the byproducts of schooling also comprise the hidden curriculum. And sometimes teachers can make or break their students through their hidden curriculum. And this is very true when we say that values are not only taught, but they are caught. They are caught when their teachers or their models, their elders, are behaving in such a way that the young ones emulate what you do. And therefore, do not underestimate the value of the hidden curriculum. The way you talk, the way you dress, the way you relate with this particular group of students, the way you treat other people. These are all parts of the hidden curriculum. The children learn from you. The students learn from you, whether you like it or not. They learn from you the bad and the good. Okay. So now, how do you assess your curriculum at the moment? Is it product, process, praxis, context, a bit of each? What changes do you envision to implement in your curriculum? Okay, questions or reflections. I don't want you to just ask questions. You can also share your reflection or your experience if you want to. Somebody says the slides are not visible. Is there something wrong?
잘 보인다. It should clearly slides
It's
are
not
fine.
hidden, is it? It's
No,
not hidden.
No, the slide is fine.
Okay. Okay, now,
Oyigo
Oyigo,
Oyigo is raising question.
yes.
Yeah, you can
Yes,
ask
go on.
question.
Go
Yeah,
on.
hello, Prof.
Hello.
Yes, I would say from a practice level, that is in my practice as an educator,
Mhm.
I use a bit of each of the product, process, practice, and context. And I'm flexible in approach because scenarios do change within the school as regards the particular kinds of students who come into the school in different sessions. And most times we find out, for example, recently, the cost of schooling was on the high. And we tended to admit pupils and students who cannot afford
We
the
lost you.
cost of schools that give a bit of quality education.
We lost you again.
मिसाल के तौर पे अब एक फेज़ पे इनपुट भी 110 होगी उसकी, यानी 1:1 का ट्रांसफार्मर है,
Do you hear
आउटपुट
him?
भी 110। अब इनपुट ये
Okay,
दायरा
sorry,
चेंज हो रही
my
है और
bandwidth
जिस
is
पे
low
120
here.
आ रही है ना, उसका टैप
Sorry.
आप उस फेज़ को क्या कर
Maybe
लेंगे
you
थोड़ा
can
सा
write it
झुका
on
देंगे
the
और
I'll
chat.
use the chat. Yes, I'll use the
तो
chat.
Okay.
5 आ रही
I'll
थी,
use the
Okay.
थोड़ा सा
chat.
बढ़ा देंगे तो आगे बैलेंस हो जाएगी, बस इतना फर्क है, ठीक है।
There is a comment on the chat box
नहीं 110 वाले हैं
from
ना, उधर
Rajvi.
जो हम 110
I
है,
work with
वैसे
college students
220 वाले हैं, लेकिन
and
फिलहाल
I
आप
feel
110
they
ही
do
बनाए ना,
not get
220 या
access to
वो बाद में किसी
education
और को
that is
करेंगे, अगली
relevant
दफ़ा इतना
to
हमने
their
लोड डाल दिया।
context, and thus the major
मैनुअल तो वो
things
जाने और
I see
फीस का
is
क्या,
to focus more onto context in
नहीं
refining
पता।
the curriculum. Context and praxis need to be given more space.
Good. I agree with you, Rajvi. And actually, it's not too difficult to have your curriculum as praxis and context, because when you're teaching, you are with the children or with young adults or adults, and you are in the environment where they live, where you live. And therefore, the challenge is for the teacher to be able to find the connection between the theme that you're teaching and to present it in such a way that it is within the reach, within the scope of their experience. I'm sure there are many, many local things that are around, that are happening, which are very helpful in bringing across so many themes in the GCED. And so I think for a teacher, what is very important is imagination too, and resourcefulness. It's no longer good enough for us teachers to be dependent on the textbooks, because many of the textbook writers have within they write textbooks only within their own experience. Of course, they do research, but we I can guarantee you they have not been to your place to do research. And who is the best researcher to make the curriculum relevant? You as the teacher, and you can even ask the students. You can involve the parents, uh, and in such a way that there is involvement also of the community. Somebody, you talked about Ubuntu, and that is a very wonderful philosophy, which I hope other peoples of the world will learn and to adopt that. Maybe some are doing it already; they just don't call it Ubuntu, but it's a very good uh, approach, a good philosophy that the world can learn from you, people who are teaching us how to live our humanity as a community, as a people. So even for that alone, you can start from that philosophy, and it can spread. You can use that as a springboard for many of your teachings. Here we have Oshan, the good. Yes, uh, Oshan, did you want to say something? Anybody else? Okay, come on.
Yeah. They
Uh,
can you
can I talk?
So
yes,
sure, except that I cannot see you. I see only four
Okay, I
faces.
can put on my camera.
Okay.
Good morning.
Dechen?
I'm Dishin Belton from Bhutan.
Okay.
Can you hear me? So
Yes,
I'm a
yes, yes.
teacher. So if I talk on the curriculum, so I have heard about product. So our curriculum is based on product, process, and context based. But praxis is new for me now. I'm hearing for the first time this praxis.
Mm-hmm.
So like example praxis, if I teach something and then after that, if you do reflection of that, is that a
Mm-hmm.
praxis?
Yes, it is a reflection, but what is the purpose of that reflection? You may reflect on what you've done with the students, but
Yeah.
what will you do with the product of that reflection?
Okay, the product of the reflection.
Yes, so it's not enough to reflect. You must
Okay.
do something uh, uh, after your reflection, whether you change entirely your paradigm, or you do some improvement, or you transform, you redirect, uh, you
If that is not
you
working.
if that is not, well, yeah, in your reflect in if in your reflection what you have
Okay.
done is good, then maybe you continue.
Okay.
But if in your reflection what you have done is there's something missing, you find out what is missing, and then you add to that. If in your reflection you find out that there's something not working, or there's something really that shouldn't be there, then
Okay.
you remove it, you replace it. Now that is what we mean by a continuous reflection, action, reflection, action. Action,
Okay.
uh, theory, action, reflection, theory, action, reflection. That is how the praxis works.
Okay. So that means our action research may fall under that praxis.
Mhm, mhm.
Is it?
Well, yeah, uh, but you should continue, because there's no a curriculum which is not uh, improved or revised becomes dormant and becomes irrelevant eventually.
Okay.
You cannot have a curriculum for 10 years. You have to change it eventually, because in 10 years time, so many things are changing, so many things are happening. And even children, their moods, their likes, their dislikes, their what they see around them also change. So if your curriculum remains the same for 10 years, you are outlived. Your curriculum is irrelevant. It doesn't respond to the challenges of the times anymore, and to the needs of your students. So is
Okay.
that did I okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else? Okay, now I I expected a longer dialogue, but I think we can go to part 4 now, and I'm sure that is what you are all waiting for, and then we will have more time to uh, to have a dialogue on part 4. So now, Archita, Hyun, in my screen, I cannot see the right part because it is covered by, but I wonder if the others can see it. Do you see the full screen?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay.
We can
Oh,
see full.
it's only me that I'm having trouble with the screen. It's okay. Um, so now our last part 4, which I'm sure is what you are waiting for. Um, GCED in my subject or my learning area, or GCED in my program, or in my school, in my college, in my university, or in my NGO. So now you have 3 ways of introducing GCED in your context, in your place, whether you integrate, you infuse, or you use the whole school approach. Now, integration, we have all been talking about it, about integration, meaning you find, and I will go to this later in more detail. You find a particular entry point in your subject area or in your learning area, in your program. You find an entry point where you can introduce GCED themes. Right? That's what we mean by integration. Infusion means that GCED is infused in all activities of the school. It is infused in all your subject areas. It is infused in your co-curricular activities. It is infused in any of your activities. It is infused like you breathe it in your school. Now, the same thing in the whole school approach, your cafeteria, your janitorial work, your garden, you should see evidence of GCED. Your relationship, the teacher student relationship, teacher administrators relationship, the school and the school community in the relationship. GCED should be permeating, GCED should be seen in all those venues, in all those relationships. That is what we mean by whole school approach. So that if your school is uh, has a whole school approach to GCED, anyone who enters your school, they open the gate, it already like they can smell it. They can smell that you have GCE, you are integrating GCD, infusing GCED. So, for example, you enter the school and you see it's green, there are gardens. Even if you are in the city, there are greens. Then that is part of sustainability, environment. Then they don't smell any garbage. Uh, then no matter how simple your school is, and then when they see students, the students greet each other or they greet the visitors. You see people smiling. uh, that those are all evidences of a whole school approach and or also infusion. Now, what I'm sure many of you are interested in is integration, because that is what individual teachers are concerned about. how do I integrate GCED in my curriculum, in my subject area, in my learning area. So now we go to the what we call uh, curriculum mapping. Curriculum mapping is an activity that examines the alignment of program goals, course objectives, instructional materials, formative activities, summative outcome assessment, and the lesson plan or the instructional plan. It is the creation of a map showing the path, the steps, the stages of teaching and learning from start to finish. Now, GCED, therefore, curriculum mapping in GCED reveals the degree of consistency between the various dimensions of your curriculum and the GCED vision, goals, objectives, content, pedagogy, and assessment. So that is what we call mapping. So when you look at a map for curriculum mapping, you have you start with the objectives probably, uh, to the content, the objectives, the activities, the assessment, and the resources. So when you look at the map, you see that there is consistency, that if this is your objective, then your content for that objective is really something that would fulfill this objective. And if you have activities, learning activities, these learning activities are they're designed so that you can achieve your objective through the content. Okay, and then your evaluation, your assessment instruments, your assessment methods should really find out whether your objectives are being met. Okay, so there is consistency. The the objective, the content, the activities, and the evaluation, and also your resources, your references, because when you teach, you need resources. Therefore, your resources should be consistent with your content and your objectives. So if your content is, for example, on sustainability of the river, then what are the resources that you are going to have, so that you will be able to make your resources compatible with your content or your objective. So that is what we call mapping. The alignment alignment of all these items: the goal, the objectives, the instructional materials, formative and summative assessment, and they all go into your plan. Now, that is very well done when you are teaching only one subject, let's say literature. You can easily do that, make sure that there is consistency. But the problem now is, sorry, when you are introducing GCED themes into your already existing curriculum, let's say literature. For your literature, for example, for one whole year, you already have lined up. These are the content and objectives for literature from day one up to the end of the year. Okay? So now what you need to do in curriculum mapping for integration is to look at your content and your objectives. And then your third column will be the themes of GCED and the objectives. And we go to the cognitive, socio-emotional, and and behavioral domain later on. So you have your existing curriculum, literature or social studies, and you have a very well lined up curriculum from day one to day 100. You look at the content, or maybe you look at the objectives and see where any theme of GCED can enter into either your content or your objective. Am I making sense? Okay. So let's say in one of I will give a more specific example later on when we move on to the themes. So that is what we call curriculum mapping. You map. So when social studies teachers do a mapping, it is better when they do it as a team. Most schools, you have learning areas, social studies, and you have your all the social studies teachers getting together, all the math teachers getting together, all the science teachers getting together, and you map as a learning team. You map if your learning area, all the teachers in teaching that learning area should get together and map at the end of the school year so that you will be ready at the beginning of the school year. Is it okay so far? I am making sense? Okay. This is not a problem for teachers or for even university because the programs are already there. You're not inventing a new program. Your programs are already there. Uh, so all you have to do is really physically map, put on a table, enlarge all your curriculum by units if you want, or by grading periods, first grading period, second grading period, and so on. You map it, and then you look at the themes. What you can do is to cut into pieces of paper the themes and issues of global citizenship education, and you put them where they can fit in your curriculum map. And you can do it by colors also if you want cognitive, social, emotional, or behavioral. But I'll go to that for the next slide. You can have different colors so that if it's cognitive, it is green. You find out the theme where you can have a cognitive objective and you stick that into your curriculum map. Okay, I'm sure if you do that as a team, then you will find out that it is possible to stick the blue or the green or the pink paper in your curriculum map. Am making sense? Am I making sense? Okay. So what is important is the alignment, okay, and the consistency between various dimensions of a curriculum and GCED in terms of objectives, content, pedagogy, and assessment. So now, before we go to the details, here are some references that you can look into. We have APSIO, of course, the Global Citizenship Education, a Guide for Teachers in 2018. You have the American Institute for Research, transformative social and emotional uh, uh, praxis uh, in the equity lens in 2018. You have Kevin Kestis, Global Citizenship Education and Peace Education 2022. Oxfam is very useful, even if it is 2015. Global Citizenship in the Classroom, a guide for teachers. And you can access it in the Google, I think. I think it is available. Then there is in the Facebook, is there anyone here who is from PNU? They have lately, just 2022, the Global Citizenship Education Development Integration Project, they have a project where they integrated global citizenship in the curriculum. And in addition to in addition to PNU, where they did an integration for the Philippines, here are the countries that have done their integration, and you can take it down. Uh, Uganda. If there's anyone from Uganda here, you can contact your Department of Education. Colombia, Mongolia, Rwanda, Kenya, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, and the Philippines. They have all done an integration of GCED in their curriculum. Then my article with Dr. To on building a culture of peace, where we have the pedagogy. Uh, and then we have UNESCO, oh, Global Citizenship Education, UNESCO 2015 and UNESCO 2018. If you go to oh, the website of APCU, they also have resources, and maybe you and Chita can tell you where you may access some references. Now, in you know that in GCED we have the cognitive, social, emotional, and behavioral uh, domain of learning. Now, in the cognitive year is what the learners are supposed to achieve, to acquire knowledge, understanding, etc., etc. And social emotional develop self-awareness, self-management of emotions and feelings, uh, etc., including uh, to be able to feel empathy for others, including peers facing and suffering from realities of conflicts, violence, injustices, marginalization, discrimination, human rights violation. Now, I would like to refer you to the cognitive. The cognitive is, of course, the awareness level, raising awareness on the root causes of global, regional, national, local problems and issues of conflicts, peacelessness, and examine the possible solutions. So, in the cognitive level, it starts with the acquisition of knowledge, the realization of issues and problems, and possible solutions. So, in the cognitive dimension of GCED, it is not just to learn about the problems of the world, about the problems in their community and the world. It is not enough to do that. It is important also that within the cognitive domain of learning, the students, the learners get to learn, to hear from you, to learn from each other possible solutions to the problems that you have uncovered. Because it is not enough to know the problems. Otherwise, if you stop there, you will feel, you will leave your students, they will despair, because then they will be overwhelmed with all the problems of the world and not knowing what that there is a solution, or if there is a solution at all. uh, the children, the young people will be overwhelmed if you are they're burdened with all these problems, and all they will think of is, why did the adults leave us a world full of problems? And therefore, part of your mission within the cognitive level is not only to analyze the issues, what is happening, but also to look at possible solutions. what can be done, how can it be done. So that is part of the still part of the cognitive domain. Then it is not enough for one lesson for each session. It is not enough to leave your session at the cognitive level. You must carry on and move to the socio-emotional level. Therefore, if your students are able to analyze the problems of the world, they're able to analyze, understand the problems in their own homes, in their own community, in their own towns. Uh, you as the teacher should be able to engage them into a discussion or into a self reflection mode so that they develop self awareness, management of their emotions, and then after understanding what is happening, the next thing is to feel empathy for others. So if young people get to see the problems of the world, for example, there's so much flooding, there's so much, some people either they are drowned or the landslide and they're covered with landslide, or there is a gang problem, or there is poverty and there is a starvation. What if you leave it only in their understanding? They understand that, okay, they understand that that is happening and they understand the root causes, but you don't stop there. uh, as a teacher, you must be able to arouse in them a feeling of empathy. Is it enough that they know that this is happening? Don't they have any reaction at all? Uh, our students, don't they feel for the others at all? Uh, so if you make them walk in the shoes of others, how does it feel? So in the social emotion, in GCED, and that goes for all kinds of curriculum anyway, but in GCED, this is what we are emphasizing. It's not enough to stop in the cognitive level or the knowledge domain. You elevate that, you expand that so that the students will feel what you're teaching, will feel for the others. And so in the social emotional level, learners develop self-awareness and self-management of their emotions and the feelings and their feelings, and then they're able to feel for others. They're able to feel what the others are suffering in terms of conflicts, violence, injustices, marginalization, discrimination, human rights violations, and environmental destruction. So now you now have students who are empathetic, students who are emotionally reacting to the injustices of the world. But we shouldn't stop there. Otherwise, we're like those rich people, old people who say, "Oh, my heart is bleeding for the poor." But it stops there. Your heart is only bleeding for the poor. But that's enough. That's not enough for your heart to bleed for the poor. That social emotional uh, level of engagement with your peers and with humanity should be translated into behavioral action, empowerment for social action, both personal and social action. And so that is what we call the third domain of learning in GCED or for any curriculum for that matter. And therefore, the learners are now able to translate the cognitive, social, emotional learning into empowered, responsible, individual and social action so that they can contribute to building a more peaceful world. They can contribute to non-violent transformation. They can contribute to social and economic justice. They can contribute to the upliftment of human rights. They can contribute to the enrichment of cultural diversity, sustainability, gender equality, and democratic participation. So that completes the cycle uh, in the learning domain for GCED and for that matter for any curriculum. But because we are introducing GCED as a powerful venue for empowering our students, that is how I would look at GCED curriculum if you want to complete your curriculum map. So now we go back to the curriculum mapping. And remember the colors here, cognitive is green, socio-emotional is blue, and behavioral is pink. Now, we move to the GCED is a holistic and multidimensional concept embedding the peacelessness of the world and the building of a culture of peace. Now, in order to do this, we have several themes, issues, and problems of conflicts in the world. And these are not just on a global scale, just because Ukraine and Russia are at war, it is not the only thing we are going to think of in terms of violence. There are many direct violences that are happening in a micro level, in the home, in the family, in the community, in the school. So we need to look at direct violence. So you look at your curriculum map in social studies, in science, in math. Is there anything there in your curriculum from grade 1 to grade 6 or first grade 7 to grade 12 that has something to do with direct violence? Math, for example. Let's talk about math. Now, if you talk about percentages, how many percent have been directly impacted by the COVID in your country or in your city or in your community, in your small town? So you look at percentages. So you use that instead of percentages of something abstract, use the percentage of real events. And so you can, from there, percentages of deaths by COVID or percentages of crime in your community, percentages of those who die in famine, percentages of the homeless in your city. Uh, so that is one way of using math. And then, of course, when you move on, at the end, your summative or evaluative exercises will somehow relate to the social, emotional, and the behavioral. Okay. Now, social economic inequalities and injustices of marginalized peoples, you can translate that in very specific events in your country, in your city, in your community. What are these social economic inequalities and injustices? Now, you look at that and you look at your curriculum. If it is literature or if it is English composition, where can you integrate this theme in your subject area? And then, if you can find a theme or a topic in your curriculum, then you look at, is it cognitive? Can I do it in cognitive, social emotional, behavioral? But I assure you, most of the time, you should have all those three colors: cognitive, social emotional, and behavioral. Because as I said, the cognitive should not stop there. It should move on to social emotional and behavioral. Human rights and responsibilities, intercultural understanding, inner peace, media, health, and then the rise of authoritarianism and populism. It's more political, you go higher. So I'll stop here, and then we will go on later on to about 4 more slides. But I think at this point, many of you have questions, and also I'm losing my voice. So I'll stop here now, and I'll wait for questions. Okay.
Hello,
Hello. Yes.
this is Sarita. I would like to ask you one question on
Mm-hmm.
Russia-Ukraine war. It presents a dilemma that despite countries wanting peace, we are not finding any agency um, really active or effective to stop this war.
Yeah, that is a dilemma. Uh, Even the United Nations
Yeah,
has not been effective.
yeah. So, aren't we presenting we are trying our best to achieve through SEL, empathetic citizens, and they see a concrete example where peace is not being attained, presents a dilemma to the teacher as well as the
Mhm.
taught.
Yes, I agree with you. But then we cannot give up hope.
Yeah,
So we continue. So what we do is look for examples.
okay.
Look for examples of little victories. Sorry. Can you just excuse me? I think I need to.
Take your time.
Hello, Sarita ma'am. This is Shraddha. Ma'am, I really agree with this your point because whenever we talk about agency after the war,
Um,
Sorry, I can't hear you.
can you repeat that, please?
Shraddha, can you please
hello.
repeat?
Yeah, hi. Can you? Am I audible?
Yeah,
I just want, ma'am, that Sarita, ma'am, whatever she's talking about, it's something very relevant for nowadays. That it shows that whoever wants to do, they are doing something like that. Because the agencies are not the agency which are supposed to look after these things. They are not effective and they are not able to control the thing. This is also one of the point. And where the students and what we talk about when we talk about UNESCO and everything, the students ask questions related to the same. That if something is going on, the live example is that they are not able to control that. And how to deal with this is something very important, like what Sarita mama has spoken. I agreed with her, and if you can give us something on this particular topic.
Well, on the global level, on the international level, we are all spectators. We we are all spectators in this power struggle among the great nations, so-called great nations, the strong, powerful nations. And the middle powers are also just there waiting where to side, who is the will more likely win, and so on. And the small powers are there just there's hardly anything they can do, which uh, which shows that all the more we need to have more empowered citizenry so that we can make our leaders accountable in a peaceful way, accountable in the sense that they they are responsible for what I mean. They are elected in positions of power to represent their people, and therefore GCED here is very important because um, it's not only the themes, the topics that are being introduced, but also the pedagogy or the process, which I will go to later on. And therefore, uh, the wider the political leaders, military leaders in both the local, national, and the global, um, if they are not representing the interests of the general population, then it is all the more reason for teachers, for parents, for other adults to help conscientize the younger people and even the older people. Now, you will say teaching is the only way we can contribute to a transformation, to a local, national, and global transformation. That's our only weapon, education. And therefore, no matter what the obstacles are, no matter what we see around us, it, there's, it, it's not possible for us to give up. We should move on, and through our students, through ourselves, and through our own community. I maybe we are dreamers, and I have actually written a book. Sorry, my okay. I think I may have to stop talking and let somebody else talk. Okay. Anybody else who wants to say something while I
I really agree with you,
Yes.
ma'am. The way you say education will only help us to uh, is the only the way where we can educate the people and make the value of the peace. They can understand what is the value and how to go about it. Thank you for the suggestions and making our bond a little more like whatever we are doing. It's we are going in the right direction. For thank you for that.
Mhm. Well, thank you for a kindred soul. Okay, I'm sure you will have more questions later on because I still have a few more slides. Here are the themes, the issues, the problems. These are the possible themes, and I hope you got the procedure of how to map your curriculum, your GCED, and map it into your existing curriculum. Now, for example, to promote critical thinking, GCD integration should ensure that alternative perspectives, worldviews, and paradigms on any theme, issue, or problem are included in the curriculum. For example, the issue of direct violence. Are there alternatives to war? Okay, you research. Of course, there are many alternatives to war. And we have many examples way back in history up to now. We have many examples of conflicts that have been resolved not through war, but through amicable settlements, through dialogue, through mediation, and so on. So what we look for are the alternatives. Example, topics on national, on international, national economic development, topics on cultural diversity, topics on democracy, sustainable development, and climate change, and so on. Look for alternative views on these themes. And then when we are teaching, uh, clarifying the social, emotional, and behavioral action through the pedagogical dimensions of GCED. GCED, again, as emphasized earlier, is not only oriented to educating learners to understand the content. The processes of education needs to be also consistent with the vision and goals of GCED or other fields of transformative education. So my emphasis now as we go to the next slide is to make our pedagogy consistent with the vision of GCED. And we should recognize the limitations of our prevailing dominant banking system of education, which Paulo Freire has criticized more than so many decades ago, and it's still ongoing, a hierarchical and over competitive model of education. And many of our educational approaches are still banking system, in spite of the criticism that Paulo Freire and his colleagues has made many, many decades ago. So as a model for pedagogy, I would like to share with you this one. Uh, uh, Pedagogical principles of transformative education through peace education, education for sustainability, intercultural education, etc. Um, wait, this is obstructing my view. In pedagogy, there are four principles that we uh, hope that you will remember. The principle of holism, the principle of dialogue, critical empowerment, and values formation. Now, what is the holistic principle of education, of in educating, in teaching? When we say education is holistic, we mean to say that all issues are interrelated. They When you say environment, it's also related to culture. It's also related to human rights. It's also related to social justice. All these issues somehow are related. For example, if you cut down the trees and denude the forests, whose rights are you violating? Most often, the rights of the indigenous people who live there, and or those who have lived off the land. And then when the mountains are denuded and the rains fall and there's landslide, people down are drowned. And so all these issues are interrelated, and they should be discussed when you raise a topic. It should be discussed in all levels of education, from preschool to all the way up to university. And many of the countries that have uh, had integration of GCED, for example, the Philippines. In the Philippines, they have now a model of integrating GCED from preschool all the way to grade 12. They have not done that in the college because in the university level, the universities are in charge of that. But for basic education, it's done in all levels of education. And then when we teach to be holistic, all sectors of school and society, and therefore all the socializing agents in our society should be involved in the project of GCED. For example, the home, the schools, the church, the community, the government officials, the political leaders, uh, all of these people, all of these sectors are involved in the project of GCED. It cannot be the school alone. It cannot be the home alone. Because when we teach something to the students and they see a different behavior from our elders or politicians, then they are undermining what we teach. Therefore, there should be a consistency of what is being taught in all sectors of society. That is what we mean by holism. So, if we are teaching, it has to be holistic. Then the next pedagogical principle is dialogue. Dialogue does not mean only listening. It's okay to listen, you just listen, but is it respectful listening? Are you listening just as a matter of courtesy, or it has to be respectful, it has to be open to new ideas, it has to be participatory and democratic. Okay, that is what we mean by a dialogue. So when you teach in class, your dialogue with your
1990,
students,
1919.
your dialogue with your students should be respectful. And therefore, it's never ever use disrespectful language with your students, because you're a model, they will catch your behavior. Now, the next pedagogical principle is critical empowerment. When you teach, it is the end value of that is that you are able to empower your students to commit their mind, their heart, and spirit to personal and social action for transformation. In other words, you do not only teach the mind, you teach the heart, you teach the spirit, so that your students will be empowered and commit themselves to personal and social action, leading to transformation. Hopefully, we can change our world from a very peaceful one to a more peaceful world. So that is the third pedagogical principle. And then the last one is values formation. Remember, all of these are rooted in values. Our teaching must help in values formation. Of course, we realize that there's personal values of personal individuals and families, but values are also structural. They are embedded in our systems. There is a culture of impunity. There is a value of impunity. There is a value of corruption. There is a culture of uh, discrimination in a community. And therefore, we need to undermine the structural injustices, the values that are embedded in structures. So that is a tall order for a teacher, for anyone, uh, to be able to engage in all of this, uh, arouse critical empowerment, and at the same time, engage in values formation. So, my dear friends and colleagues, let us remember that when you teach, these are the four pedagogical principles: holism, dialogue, critical empowerment, and values formation. When you teach, the moment you stand in front of a classroom, you have 40 to 50 or 50 pairs of eyes looking at you. They can smell you. They can smell your I am not talking about physical. They can smell the cleanliness of your thoughts and the corruption of your soul. Uh, that is how I value a teacher. Once you stand in front of a classroom of 50 students or more. So now, what are these pedagogical approaches or processes? There are so many of them. You have concept mapping, web charting, storytelling, simulation, poetry, group analysis, painting, field trips, games, content analysis, social media, immersion, dancing, community cooking, singing, song composition, world cafe, community service. There's so many uh, social emotional learning, creative, participatory that you can think of. Okay. Then we have empowerment for individual and society. If you want to enrich your curriculum, integrate opportunities for learners to explore and develop commitment for action. And that action is to transform realities of conflicts, injustices, human rights violations uh, toward a peaceful, just, compassionate, and sustainable world. These are many beautiful words, okay? And I like to play with them, but I also like to act with them, act on them with my students, no matter how young or how old they are. Okay? Now, what are the examples of empowerment for transformative action? First of all, share inspiring and hopeful stories of global citizens and organizations engaging in action for building a culture of peace. You can always start your class with a story. Look for the many inspiring stories. People in Timbuktu, people in a farming community, a poor driver, a poor janitor, uh, or a gold medalist in the Olympics. There's so many inspiring and hopeful stories of global citizens that you can share with your students. Then you follow up on actual actions, school exhibition, student-led GCED, enhancement of code of conduct, solitary campaigns for social action, community pantry. Those of you who have heard of community pantries, to feed those who don't have enough food. Country and international contests, climate action or justice, human rights, work with refugees, migrant workers, peace talks, and so on. Include project-based and place-based learning activities, field experiences, participation in non-formal programs, UN clubs, ASP net, school branches, and so on. Now, conclude each lesson by inviting learners to suggest possible actions for transformation that they can take as individuals in cooperation with other global citizens, institutions, NGOs, and CSOs. So for every lesson that you have, you try to invite your learners. They themselves can suggest possible actions for transformation. You don't have to tell them yourself. Many of them are very creative. Many of them are eager to do something for people around them. Many of them are eager to grow up. So that is my sharing with you for tonight. And so I'd like to conclude by asking for your reflections. If there's no time, we have passed the time. You can write it yourself and exchange with each other. You send it to Achita and Hyun, and maybe we can do something about it to respond to your concerns. For example, what GCED themes and issues need more emphasis in your curriculum? You look at your curriculum, what do you want to give more emphasis? Do you feel you have adequate training in integrating the content or the cognitive domain? What paradigm have you been using for your GCED? To what extent have you been able to improve the social emotional learning of your students? have you integrated empowerment for action in your GCED? And this one, what, I cannot read the last one because it is covered here. What obstacles do you anticipate in implementing curriculum mapping for GCED in your school, institution, or organization? I think this is the one that you may have a lot of questions or issues, but I'm sure you can do more research. You look at the references that I gave you, and so this is it. It's midnight. Oh, Oyigwa raised his hand. Maybe we can respond to you if I can. Oyi?
Okay, let me try. Though my
Yeah.
bandwidth is a bit low.
Okay.
Thanks, Prof, for such an elaborate discourse. Actually, in my own context here in Nigeria, in my school, I realized that it's better to create the right environment to enable teachers and school staff to have the capacities to model GCED principles and themes. And that is why we have decided to adopt the whole school approach as an approach to building that capacity. So we have been able to review the vision and mission of the school to reflect GCED themes and principles as a starter. So I think this is working because everybody are now carried along, and including students, in fact. So the students were involved in the visioning. So I believe when capacities are built around parents, teachers, educators, then we can begin to see inputs in the lives of these future leaders so that they build a more peaceful and just society that we all are aspiring for. So this is my reflection from my engagement with GCED and this, and I must commend you, Prof, for this discourse, because this is one of those things we need so that we could be able to create that environment that shapes the minds of learners to want to adopt GCED principles personally and collectively. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that sharing. Now we have one example, a success story, and it is a whole school approach. So we should take inspiration from that sharing, and I hope that you will all have some takeaways from this session. And I wish you all the best and all the uh, resources that you can think of. You go through the references that I gave you, and now we have Mr. Google. It's easy for for those of you who have access to get to all those resources. So I I hope that this has been an enriching to our sharing with all of you.
So
Yes, I'm very thankful, ma'am.
thank you very much, Miss Professor Virginia, for taking your invaluable time with us today. I know that we have so many questions from the floor that are still unanswered due to the time limitation, but we'll be happy to share the questions and comments raised by our participants today through email, so you can take a look at it. And if you can answer them, we can also deliver your answer to our participants. Would that be okay?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay,
I can
thank you
do
very
that.
much. And I understand that many of you are very curious about GCED curriculum design and integration, and this 2 short hour may have given you the glimpse of idea and some guidance towards to it. And we will try to provide more opportunities like today's session. So this will be helpful for you to create your own GCED curriculum in the future. So once again, thank you so much, Professor Virginia, for your invaluable time today. And I also would like to take this opportunity to thank our audience who are very busy working during the daytime probably, but still joining us here for the session today. And as we have promised, we will be sending you the record link of today's session, but this will take some time, so appreciate you being patient. Regarding the PowerPoint, we need the permission from the Virginia, so we'll be in touch regarding your request of receiving her PowerPoint today. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending today's session, and have a nice day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Recording
Thank
stopped.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.